Beautiful, isn't it? My name is Scott. I'm just a reflective guy who creates YouTube videos. And today I'm asking myself the question, and you, my audience, if I should. In other words, should I be creating these videos? And it really comes down to meaning and purpose. I'm not conceited enough to just me myself. This video really is about all of us. What is our meaning and purpose in life? And are we living it? Today we're walking to Drillin National Park, right outside of Pogradec. And the little village you can see in the foreground in the mountains before you get up to the foothills. And as we walk, we're going to talk about meaning and purpose. And you can let me know in the comments what you think. I'm not asking out of desperation. My YouTube channel is doing pretty well, especially since I retired from my full-time job in information technology in November and came here to beautiful Albania in December. My walking videos, my social and cultural contemplation and commentary videos have been doing pretty well. But they haven't really gotten the huge boost in retention that I thought they would. So, am I making a difference? Am I offering meaning to you? It's an important question that I think a lot of YouTubers don't ask. And we in general, as people, don't always ask. And it's hard, especially when you're working full-time, maybe 2 jobs, maybe 3 jobs, to find meaning and purpose in life. Honestly, just don't have the time. And then, once you retire, like I have, I'm very blissful and thankful for that. It creates its own challenges, its own questions. What is the purpose of life? What is our meaning? What are we here for? What are we supposed to contribute back? And if I'm not doing that for you and for others, does this channel really have purpose? I can't answer that question, only you can. But like I said, my channel is doing better. I have almost 4,000 subscribers at this point, and for those of you who are, thank you. My views are almost up to about 800,000 at this point. So I'm within probably about the top 10% of channels on YouTube, which is good. But if my message isn't getting out there, if people aren't finishing my videos, is it because my content isn't good? Or is it something else? And I'll touch on that a little bit later. We often forget to ask ourselves why we're here. And as a channel that discusses social and political commentary, I think it's important to discuss that kind of thing. Let me put it this way to you. I'm sure you've heard that old adage, if a tree falls in a forest, it doesn't make a noise. Well, obviously that means not that the tree itself doesn't make the noise when it falls, obviously it does. But if it's not observable, if it can't be quantified, how do we gauge it? How do we make a judgment? On things like YouTube, we have the algorithm, we have analytics, we have statistics. But for most of our lives, we don't. For most of the things we do, we don't get feedback unless we specifically ask for it. And even then, sometimes it's hard to get. I guess the question comes down to, am I saying something important? Or am I saying something important that other people aren't? I'm what I consider modern-day polymath, a Renaissance spirit, like the name of my channel. And I do my best when I comment on things, kind of a modern-day Samuel Clemens. Certainly without the wisdom or poetic nuance that he has had. So I'm going to try to keep into that lane. And most of my videos are going to be walking videos like this, where I just talk. And hopefully gauge your reactions through comments. We are more than the sum of our parts. We are more than what effort we put out there as far as work goes. I knew that when I worked full-time in my job. I was more than my job. I think most of you probably agree with that summation in your lives. A lot of times people end up just getting a job because they need a job. They aren't fulfilling their heart's desire. They'd probably be rather doing a myriad of other things. And especially if you have to do 2 or 3 jobs. It's not the same as meaning and purpose in life. So, what is meaning and purpose? I've done videos on this topic before, and if you haven't actually checked them out, I highly recommend it. Basically, it comes down, in my opinion, to this. Do we give more back than we put in? Do we justify our existence by our actions, by our thoughts, by how kind we are to ourselves and others, and to the beautiful planet that we all call home? Do we try to grow as people? Do we help others to grow? And essentially, that is the purpose of my channel. And only you can tell me if I'm succeeding on that. But here's a hard truth. As a channel dedicated to the modern day polymath and to a Renaissance spirit, in other words, people who are trying to be more, people who are looking at patterns and saying things are kind of off. This isn't the world that we should be in. This isn't the right directions that things are going. And we need a cultural and spiritual and intellectual renaissance. If you don't agree with that, I'm not sure really what you get from this channel. I hope something. But I think I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about the ills that we face today, individually and as culture and society. So let's dovetail that back into what I was saying about meaning and purpose. As a YouTuber, we're taught one of the most important things to do is to create a really good opening hook within the first 10 seconds of our videos. Something that keeps you entertained and interested in watching for the next 10, 30 seconds, 90 seconds, hour. The formula for creating a good video is based upon the predication that people have very short attention spans. And I have to agree that that's true nowadays. A lot of us are just looking for the next thing to occupy our time. We aren't looking at the road ahead. We aren't looking at the big picture. We aren't looking at the patterns we see in front of us. I mean, we all like cat videos. But if you spend all day watching cat videos, you're not accomplishing anything else. If you spend all day just playing video games, your life just becomes a diversion. Are you actually living? If you don't engage with the world, are you truly part of it? If you don't work on your health, if you don't exercise, even if that just means taking a stroll down a beautiful street, if you don't watch what you eat, what we say, what we do, are we truly being fully alive, fully human, fully a Renaissance spirit? If we don't look in front of us and see the camaraderie in others, the importance of socialization, if we can't look at the lake and see the beauty and appreciate the awe and splendor of God's creation, are we truly seeing the world? If we're not grateful for what we have, if we don't aspire to be more, to be better, mind, body, and soul. Are we living up to our potential? I'm not saying any of this to judge anyone in particular. I'm saying that there are problems with society today. I certainly am not perfect. I make mistakes every day. I sin. I have regrets. I have guilt. I have shame. We all do. We're all human. But I try to be better. And I think that's one of the biggest issues we face today, is that we aren't driven to be better people. I'm not saying that about you necessarily. If you're a Renaissance spirit, you're already striving to be more than I think most people are. And I'm certainly doing things on this channel that work against my numbers, my views, the algorithm. I was just offered an opportunity to be part of a program to help commodify YouTube more, selling products and services, which I decided not to take part in, because my channel isn't about selling things. But there are conscious costs in our decisions. And I think a lot of times we forget, as people, as society, as culture, about that. So that's the purpose of my channel. And I do want to get into a topic that might get me in trouble. My dear mother, who passed away in 2023, definitely believed in the axiom, if you have nothing else nice to say, don't say anything at all. I don't know any woman, any person, who ever bit her tongue as much as my mother did. She was very, very diplomatic. She never had an unkind word to say about anyone. Everyone who remembers her fondly says that she was one of the nicest people on the face of the earth. And I certainly believe that and miss her dearly. And it's also true that we shouldn't judge others lest we be judged. It's in the Bible. But that doesn't mean, neither of those things mean, that it's okay to ignore injustice, to ignore discrimination, to ignore the things that are failing us as a society, as individuals. Things that are letting our earth down, things that are destroying our environment. We all have the ability, and I would say the obligation, to speak out against those things. And I'm going to continue doing that on this channel. Again, it might hurt me, but I think it's important. Because honestly, otherwise, what am I doing here? YouTube affords creators the opportunity to speak to a lot of people that we would otherwise never be able to speak with, to interact with. So here in my soapbox, my pedestal, I feel compelled to do that. Because otherwise, what's the point of even watching? What's the point of actually creating these videos? To that end, guys, I'm wondering if doing my shorts videos, which are just kind of vapid, just kind of fun little tangents, are worth the effort. Let me know in the comments. So, I don't know if it's sage wisdom or just another white guy pontificating. You can tell me. But if this stuff resonates with you, please let me know. Because I'm really seriously wondering if I should continue with this. I recently read that Donald Trump's poll numbers were going up amongst swing voters. Which I thought bared comment, because it goes exactly into what I'm saying. So much of our society and culture just don't work, aren't valid, aren't helpful, aren't beneficial. And a lot of that is because so many of us either don't have the time, the energy, or honestly the inclination to care about what's going on, to be part of a community, a society. And I think that is just a perfect example of some of the issues today. If you are a swing voter, let me ask you this question. What makes you swing back and forth? Why don't you have a strong opinion on things like, is war good? Is war bad? When a president of the United States can't even tell us why we're in this war in the first place, how can you justify your belief that he should be president and that he's doing a good job? Are you paying attention to the news? Are you looking at what's happening in the world today? Are you looking at the long-term implications and consequences of what this is going to do, not only to yourself, but to others? When I say yourself, I'm talking about gas prices, inflation, all the things that supposedly Americans are supposed to care about. When Americans are shot in the street, why aren't more people bothered by that? When they're shot by their own government? How can I have a channel about modern polymathy and Renaissance spirit without talking about politics? If you have an answer for me, please let me know. But the willful ignorance, the cognitive dissonance, the bias that I see from so many of my own countrymen, and people around the world for that matter, just makes me wonder what's going on with society today, with culture. When people can't afford to pay rent, whilst others are buying $25 cookies, And I realize to some degree that that's something small that a person can partake in. If they can't pay for rent, at least they can buy a $25 cookie, right? There are so many serious issues today, and things are just getting worse, and they will continue to get worse. And things like artificial intelligence are going to make people poorer. More people will be unemployed in the next 10 years. I totally understand and appreciate why millennials and Gen Z are just despondent beyond belief. And to that point, willing to make sacrifices buying $25 cookies. But again, it comes back down to the point of what is meaning and what is our purpose if we can't speak out against these things? And if we all become unemployed because AI takes our jobs, or because the economy tanks because of the presidential war for no apparent reason that you can't even justify, not to defend the regime in Iran. But let's face it, there are more tyrants out there in the world, in America, in Israel, in Iran, than there were 20, 30 years ago, 50 years ago. Leaders using war as a diversion to cover their own illegal actions, both at home and abroad. And people just acquiescing and agreeing that this is the right thing to do. So what happens if we don't have jobs? What happens when the majority of the population are retirement age? What do we do with ourselves? How do we spend our days? How do we find meaning and purpose? I think it's incumbent upon all of us to start asking those questions, and to start asking them now, before it's too late, before we find ourselves in those positions. Because frankly, it's coming. So guys, that's the end of this video. Thank you for joining me. I hope it was worth your time and attention. I hope you enjoyed the beautiful sights and sounds of Pogradec, Albania. I will be filming the rest of my walk, and I'll put that in a separate video, as well as the small village beyond. We're almost at the border now. But tell me in the comments if you agree with the video, if you understand what I'm trying to convey, and what you think about what's happening in the world. We're at a precipice, guys. I think the choices we make now are more important than they probably have been for most of our lives. So I'm willing to speak out, even if it gets me in trouble. Take care, guys. Peace.